Hi everyone, Anthony Brand-Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new World's End Girlfriend album, Resistance and the Blessing. This is a massive new album from Nagasaki producer, composer, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, World's End Girlfriend, aka Katsuhiko Maeda, who has prolifically been releasing music as World's End Girlfriend for decades now, and while I've never been a massive fan of the project, I do see the appeal of its unique combination of epic post-rock builds and intricate glitchy electronics, especially given that Katsuhiko has made at least a few genre-defining albums along the way and collaborated with the likes of Mono. Now, I will admit though, the over-the-top post-rock cliches have not really been doing it for me as of late, even in the case of World's End Girlfriend, even though the last real album from this project, 2016's Last Waltz, was super cinematic and heavily orchestrated. However, I was excited about the prospect of this new album here, as I heard it was wildly experimental, huge, and a pretty massive change-up for World's End. And it is most definitely all of those things. We have 35 tracks on this record, which span just short of 2.5 hours long. Even a single listen to this thing is a pretty massive undertaking. So I was kind of hoping to be taken on a journey with this one. And for sure it was a journey, but one where I instantly wanted to turn around and go back home, which is an unfortunate feeling to have, not just because the record is so long, but also no doubt many years of work went into the creation of this album, as there are a lot of details to its various genre fusions. We have deafening, distorted guitar crescendos on this thing, complex MIDI compositions, ambient passages, speedy breakbeats, intense chaotic glitch breakdowns, plunderphonic sample collages, sampled and also original movements of classical music, and also guest singers, spoken word passages. While I wouldn't say this album has everything, it certainly comes close. So just at a baseline, I'm pretty impressed with the level of technical skill required to embody and compose within all the genres that are featured on this project. That alone is quite a feat. There are also some combinations of styles I most definitely have not heard before quite like this. But even if I do find that aspect of the album to be kind of amazing, that doesn't change the fact that my actual experience listening to this thing, frankly, was hell. Aesthetic hell. As often the portrayals of the many genres strewn about this project, kind of littered all over the place like toys in a child's bedroom, are tacky, are watered down, are obvious, are basic, and typically thrown together in a very sloppy and maybe ham-fisted way. Kind of seems like the record is mostly going for cheap thrills, or, you know, just the bragging rights to say, yeah, I put this and also this together, and nobody else would have thought to do it maybe. What's worse is this LP seems very deeply convinced of its own genius and grandiosity, when in reality the only way I could see someone walking away from this record thinking that it is monumental is if their standard for epic music is like, I don't know, AAA video game soundtracks, or cliche post-rock, or anime TV show intros, big budget movie trailers, or the most kitschy heavy metal records imaginable. But I suppose even if this record is torture, it's torture in different ways on every track. Yeah, exactly what I want to hear. Your meaningful spoken word classical intro interspersed with brittle digital distortion that feels like killer wasps climbing into my ears. Not only is the sampled electronic slap bass all over this track awful, but it definitely does not go with the wintry classical Home Alone preparation montage music, and goes even less with the glitchy EDM breakdown bits. beats, as well as the random samples of fucking Ode to Joy, which at least serves as a reminder of like a better piece of classical music you could be listening to instead. This track reads like the commercial sound bed to an ad where somebody is most definitely going to be getting up to some Christmas mischief to sell you on a shitty piece of electronic equipment or some candy. That is until Katsuhiko starts incorporating these brittle fried rhythm guitars and merry-go-round waltz grooves, as well as the completely soulless grating electronic beats. If you duck out before the end of this track, you are going to save yourself probably a lot of tinnitus. This track is basically doing everything it can to be the most annoying thing I've heard all year. Some of the most headache-inducing and horrendous distorted guitars I've heard in a minute, which of course I want to hear, along with awful vocal drops of what sounds like some guy going, "Yeah!" It's like someone's throwing meme drops in the middle of the track. Meanwhile, this one sounds like a random ambient sound effects reel. Then this one is like the soundtrack to the worst sci-fi chase scene ever. Oh boy, I love this. Chamber strings, opera vocals, crispy breakbeat runs, just beautiful, beautiful. Boy, I just love sleepy doctor's waiting room jazz built out of crappy DAW plug-in strings. That is just aesthetic beauty. This is one of many tracks on this massive album where there's a lot of instrumentation, a lot of details, a lot of layers, but it's all so loud and bold and aggressively in your face all at once. There's so little balance to anything in these mixes, especially with the drums, which completely knock off kilter any attempt to make these tracks sound subtle and nuanced and beautiful. I mean, I get on some level a lot of these tracks are supposed to be glitchy, but glitch doesn't necessitate that the music pieces have to be incessantly interrupted by a bunch of random sonic garbage. The glitches can actually add to the musical experience that you're in the midst of and be musical themselves, not just obnoxious and disorienting, but whatever. Yeah, the random ear-piercing tones strewn about this one pretty much make it a non-starter, even if I do find some of the industrial electronics throughout the track to be some of the most captivating music on the entire record. I suppose that's one of the great ironies of the album. When it does hand you over a piece of instrumentation that's pretty cool, it's gonna hit you with stuff that gives you deep physical pain. Yeah, then the back end of this LP contains what is probably the most pretentious and shitty rendition of Ave Maria I've ever heard in my entire life. The lifeless and fake drums, the tacky and artificial orchestrations, which serve as a foundation for what sounds like somebody doing like a really terrible opera performance through a distorted drive-through speaker box, which, yeah, love that. That is just a great sound that is being generated here. And it gets even better when we have all of these harsh, distorted guitars with, again, lots of crappy, crummy, brittle, digital distortion fed through what sounds like some kind of drain pipe echo. It really does feel like every effort is being made to search for the most ugly and hideous and just stomach-churning effects and instrumental choices on pretty much every major song here. It's actually kind of shocking because it does, on some level, seem as if this record, for hours, is trying to do everything that it can to avoid generating a pleasurable sound. Now, I will say, there are some shorter tracks and interludes strewn about the record, many of which are pretty listenable or even, beautiful, at least for a few moments. But here's the thing. I'm not pulling up to a 2-hour album to enjoy the interludes. And honestly, one of the only reasons I might be enjoying them is because they kind of feel like an oasis from the utterly torturous big cuts on this thing. Yeah, overall, this was awful. This was truly awful. And I'm not really sure what else to say about it other than that. The underground accolades that I've seen this album getting over the past few months, I will say, are pretty perplexing because my experience with the album was not good. As a listener, I felt mostly like I was being assaulted, which is why I'm pretty much feeling a strong 1 on this album. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, World's End Girlfriend, forever.